Hi, Annalisa Six here with the Lady of Leisure and the Sober Curator to give you your February 2023 horoscope for the sun and rising sign of Capricorn. I'm going to try really hard to not futz around with my hair like I did the last two videos. It's driving me crazy today. But Capricorn, we're just going to get right into you. Have you been experiencing an identity crisis lately? That's my main question for you, because December and January, we've had Mercury passing through the sign of Capricorn, your sign. And while this is not a negative thing, we did have Mercury retrograde through the end of December and the first half of January, and then Mercury stationed direct. And then we were in the shadow period until the end of January, pretty much. Like the last few days, like today, for example, we're out of the shadow. It's January 31st when I'm recording this. And so we're out of that shadow period. And we're going to be entering February with Mercury in your sign of Capricorn until the 11th. And so if during that retrograde period that happened at the end of December and throughout the first part of January was a time when you were reflecting a lot on your identity and who you are to yourself on a very individuated, personal way, that was a big theme for you during the Mercury retrograde. Are you feeling like your sense of self is evolving or changing, and that you're not feeling super confident in who you are moving forward? Maybe you're feeling confident now that the retrograde is over and that personal reflection period was really positive for you in figuring out who you are to yourself and how you want to move forward. February is a great month for you to take all of that energy that you had over the last month that was confusing or maybe soul searching, or even just you analyzing yourself and who you want to be in this new year of 2023 and starting to put those steps into motion. February is an action month. It's a great time for you to start taking action. Maybe you still feel a little bit confused. That's okay. One of the things that's really positive for you to do the first 2 weeks of February is to journal your relationship to yourself. And what does it mean? What does it look like? What are the parts about your relationship to yourself and your identity that you love? You could just make a big list of everything that you love about yourself, and then make a list of the things that you perceive as areas for self-improvement, and ask yourself, what are the solutions? How do I hit those goals of what I think I need to improve upon? And also, Capricorn is its own worst critic. You might not really need to improve upon much. You might just think you do. And part of self-improvement could be not needing to improve anything and having more acceptance for yourself. And this is going to come into play when Mercury enters Aquarius. It's going to move out of the area of identity and move into the area for you that has to do with self-worth and also money. Mercury in this area of the chart is a great time for financial planning and making moves when it comes to how you build material stability for yourself in your life. But it's also an area that has to do with self-worth. And so you might be challenged in the month of February to really rise up to what your value is. I feel like Capricorn is usually pretty great at seeing its own worthiness out in the world. However, if you're a frugal Capricorn, you might have a hard time really believing in your ability to ask for what you're worth. Like I said, Capricorn is its own worst critic. And so having more self-acceptance around yourself and having more of a sense of self-worth is going to be really beneficial for you once Mercury moves into Aquarius. We start out February in Aquarius season, so the sun is already highlighting that area of the Capricorn horoscope chart. And so those themes are already coming up for you, but it's bringing life and vitality there. So if you've been having a hard time with financial planning or figuring stuff out, hopefully once Mercury joins the Aquarius party, you'll start to kind of feel like the plan is becoming more clear, or that that's something that you can start to work out. Again, Mercury is about our thoughts and our communication. And so a lot of times it has to do with how we plan things. It's not necessarily always seeing the plan it's not seeing the fruit yet necessarily. It could just be putting the plan into play or into motion. The fruit may come later. Venus is going to be in Pisces. It's going to pass through 6 degrees all the way to 29 degrees of Pisces up until the 20th, and then it'll move into Aries. And so the area that Venus is affecting for the Capricorn horoscope chart is the area that has to do with our communication. And so again, we've talked a lot about Mercury and how Mercury influences communication, but Venus should actually come through and put some ease into that area. Pisces is the mutable water sign that rules spirituality and the hidden realm, the void. It's said to be the area that our soul comes from, is in Pisces. And so where the Venus transit is happening is around our perceptions and how we communicate. And because Capricorn can be kind of rigid sometimes, Pisces is an energy that dissolves that rigidity. It kind of brings pleasure and awakening to the things that live outside of structure, which can be very uncomfortable for Capricorn. But Venus is pleasurable. Venus is exalted in the sign of Pisces. It enjoys being in Pisces. It enhances Piscean energy. So it's also a really great time for writers with this placement to find new inspiration with their writing. It's a great time to find ways to communicate in softer, less rigid ways, or ways that are more artistic and creative. When I was writing music and writing songs, I was a lot more poetic than I am now. And sometimes I would just speak things that people would say, is that from a song or is that a poem? And I didn't know that it sounded that way, because that's just something that, as somebody with a Pisces moon in my third house, that is just something that I inherently was kind of on that wagon all the time when I was writing songs. It was just a way that it kind of naturally flowed out of me. And so you might feel that way, Capricorn dominant person, that words and art is flowing out of you in a more poetic way or soft way or creative way than it does in other periods of your life. It's enhanced by Venus here. After that transit, or also before I get into that, this is also a time where you're, like, a lot of creatives feel when they're creating that they are channeling something outside of them, the divine or spirit or whatever. This is also a really powerful time for that. So if you're somebody that believes in that, if you like to do channeling or automatic writing, your connection to the ethereal in that way is enhanced. And so this is a great time for you to exercise those modalities. Once Venus enters Aries on the 20th, it's going to move into the area of the chart that has to do with your home and your relationship to family. And so this is a really good time for you to focus on things that you want to do around your home that empower you, because it's Aries. It might be important for you to carve out an area for creativity that's all your own, and anything that makes your space more aesthetically pleasing. So the last part of February, you're going to be feeling that way, like you want to enhance your physical surroundings, and that maybe you want to connect to family members. Jupiter's also in Aries for the whole month of February. It's passing through 6 and 11 degrees of Aries, and so your home is already getting that enhancement. I tend to think people that have Jupiter or Sagittarius energy here, whether it's in a natal chart or in a transit chart with Jupiter, we tend to have a longing to explore our world in a way that makes us feel like we're at home. So it's like, instead of feeling like home is a physical house, home is the world. Home is a feeling and not necessarily an actual physical place. And so if you feel inclined to want to live somewhere else for a period of time or explore other options of places to live, you might feel that in February. It might be this kind of time of like, okay, like I'm down to explore some other ideas of what home means to me. So that's definitely an energy that you've already had in the month of January, but it's continuing for February, and then it'll be more enhanced once Venus enters Aries on the 20th. And Venus and Jupiter will make a conjunction at the end of the month. So if you are planning on moving or living somewhere else, Venus conjunct Jupiter might be a really positive time on the 28th, that very last day, where those things are kind of coming together for you. Mars we've had in Gemini since August, and it was retrograde from the end of October to the first half of January. And now we're finally having the last stretch of Mars through February, half of March, before it moves out of Gemini for a long time. Thank God. We're so over Mars and Gemini. But with that said, think about the last few months since August and what's been going on in your life in the area of your health. So the area of the chart that is affected right now by the Capricorn horoscope with Gemini, Mars and Gemini, has to do with your daily routines and your health. How are you taking care of yourself? How are you structuring your day? And you might have felt like over the last few months, it was a bit chaotic with Mars there. It's possible that your nervous system was having a difficult time. You might have been doing too much and experiencing some of the issues that can happen in the nervous system or in your mind, your mental health. Your mental health is really important for you to prioritize while Mars is passing through the rest of Gemini. So if that's something that you've been struggling with over the last few months, learn from that, learn from I don't want to call them mistakes, because I think it's not a mistake if we're learning and we're gathering more information and applying that information to make something better. But sometimes what happens that may feel like a mistake, I don't think it's a mistake really, but it might feel like it, is if we push ourselves or we do things that we know do not provide good mental health, and we continue to repeat those patterns or those cycles over time, and then wondering why we're still having the same problems. And then we're kind of starting to fall into victim mentality, and we continue to make maybe mistakes and experience the consequences of that with our health or our outer world in a way where we feel bad about it, And so this is an opportunity to look back over the last few months and say, what are some areas that I didn't really take my mental health into consideration, and I maybe overdid it or pushed myself in an aggressive way, and that was not productive, and it actually hurt me in the bigger picture to do that, because a lot of times we'll think in the moment, if I just push through, I'll get all this done and then I'll feel better. And sometimes the opposite happens, where we push through, we get all this done and we don't feel better. Sure, that's done, but we end up having some kind of mental health issue or physical issue because we didn't honor ourselves or our bodies, which we start to see the consequences of those things the older that we get. And so when we're young, we don't really pay a lot of mind to it. If you're in your early 20s or even your teens and you're watching this video, that might not totally apply to you because you have a certain amount of health and bandwidth for a lot. But for somebody that's older or somebody that does experience health problems more extremely, that type of behavior it's really detrimental to your longevity and your health. And so that's something with Mars still in this area, it's really good for you to think about. It's good for you to think about, do my routines and the way I structure things support good health? And you have all of February and the first half of March to be thinking about that before Mars moves into Cancer and influences a different part of your chart. We're going to get into the moon. So we have a full moon on February 5th at 16 degrees of Leo. And full moons are times where we release. So we think about things that we want to let go and release, but they're also great times for manifestation. So the first few days before the moon is waxing and it's making its way into fullness. This is a great time for setting intentions towards things that we want to call in and manifest into our lives. And then after the full moon, the 2.5 days that the moon is full, we enter the disseminating phase. And that's a great time for releasing. And so we can do both things during a full moon. Some people think that you can only do one or the other, but really it just depends on whether the moon is waxing or waning. So you can utilize that energy and the fullness. And the area that this is going to be impacting Capricorn the most is shared assets and resources. And so this is a great time if you're thinking about taking on a mortgage, a loan, if you have money that you need to sort out with a bank, if you have debt that needs to get squared up or paid off. February is a great month to start making moves around that, especially with Mercury in Aquarius. Mercury will be in Capricorn when that full moon hits, but once it's in Aquarius, again, you're supported in making plans when it comes to your finances. So you can set intentions on that full moon that you want to call in more personal empowerment and creative solutions in the sign of Leo, creativity around those shared assets, resources, or any kind of financial things that you have out in the ether, and honing all that in and getting it all together. The other part of that is your marriage. If you are married, or anybody that you are personally sharing those financial responsibilities with, great time to set intentions towards those relationships and how they're going. It's also the area of the chart that rules sex, death, and rebirth. And so it's our relationship to transformation and transmutation of energy. And so if you have a certain desire to get more esoteric with it, this is a really good time, especially in the sign of Leo, to explore what your relationship is to your own sexuality and personal empowerment. And so I think some Kundalini yoga would be really positive for the Capricorn individual, especially working on root up to head and then going back down, and kind of, meditating on that, because when we're working on Kundalini, we're working on the areas of the body that are all connected to where our power lies, which is in the root. And so our sexual power lies in those lower 3 chakras, and can be really positive for gaining self-confidence and personal empowerment and transmutation of energy. And what's also really poignant with Kundalini is that when Kundalini is activated, it's really great energy for healing any kind of mental or physical ailments. For some people have a negative reaction when their Kundalini is activated, but depending on where you're at in your spiritual journey, it can be really healing energy. So that's something to maybe explore as well. I'm a big fan of Kundalini exercises. The new moon hits on the 20th. So we'll enter Pisces season on February 19th, and then we'll have a new moon in Pisces at 1 degree on the 20th. And that new moon is going to be, again, in the area of the Capricorn chart that has to do with communication and even our mindset around how we communicate and our relationship to our perceptions of things. And again, in Pisces, it's more open, creative, artistic, spiritual, all of that stuff. So if you are trying to find modalities in your life that support you in your communication with others or yourself, and opening yourself up to more of a spiritual mindset, this new moon is a really good time for that. It's a great energy for creatives, artists, and inspiring, waking up, I should say, a dry spell if you've had a lack of inspiration. So hopefully that period you'll want to hunker in with yourself and focus on igniting your creative spirit. That's a really good energy for you to be focusing on the 20th. That is your horoscope for February, and I hope that it is a great and financially abundant month for you, Capricorn.